Hi, my name is Anna, and every week I summarize a book for you. And if you are enjoying these videos, please subscribe to my channel, like and comment on these videos. Engagement is what helps promote my work here on YouTube, and I really do appreciate it. Today, I will be discussing The Explosive Child, a new approach for understanding and parenting easily frustrated, chronically inflexible children by Dr. Ross Greene. I have chosen this book because parenting really isn't a level playing field, and I wanted to make sure that I was being inclusive by choosing a book that provides a clear framework for understanding and also managing children that are more challenging than others. This book is great for kids that have officially been diagnosed with ADHD or ODD, for example, but it's also extremely helpful if you simply have a child that could be described as defiant or strong-willed. And it can be used by teachers to resolve challenging behaviors at school. First, we will take a look at why these behaviorally challenging kids act the way they do, and then we will deep dive into the actual framework, providing clear strategies on how to collaboratively problem solve with these kids. The main message of the book is that kids do well if they can, which is very different from the standard view that kids do well when they want to, assuming that poor behavior is a choice. You know the things that are commonly said about behaviorally challenging kids. They are attention-seeking, stubborn, manipulative, defiant, out of control. They are skilled at testing limits, pushing buttons, coercing adults into giving in and getting their way. And you know, perhaps from personal experience, what is being said about their parents, that they are passive, permissive, inconsistent disciplinarians. And Dr. Ross Greene tells us that we shouldn't believe any of it. Research has proven that behaviorally challenging kids are challenging because they are lacking the skills not to be challenging. They do not choose to exhibit challenging behavior any more than a child would choose to have a reading disability. Your child badly wants to do well. He would do well if he could. And doing poorly isn't working out well for him at all. Challenging kids are lacking the skills of flexibility, adaptability, frustration, tolerance, and problem solving. Skills that most of us take for granted. And we know that they are lacking those skills because they are not challenging all of the time. They are challenging sometimes, particularly in situations when those exact skills are required. These kids need something else from us, something that rewards and punishments aren't delivering. If a child is already upset, threats and imposed solutions and timeouts are going to fuel the fire. And if he isn't already upset, these things are a good way to get him there. If the child lacked the skills of reading or spelling, we wouldn't use adult-imposed consequences to teach those skills. So we need to start by assuming that these kids are lacking skills rather than motivation. This framework is focusing on the problems rather than the behaviors. It's focusing on resolving those problems rather than rewarding and punishing the behaviors. And it's focusing on solving those problems proactively rather than in the heat of the moment. And when the problems are solved, challenging behaviors associated with those problems will subside. Let's take a look at the first two steps of the framework. Understanding why your kid is challenging is the first step. While it's understandable that up until now you've been primarily focused on the behaviors like crying, screaming, swearing, kicking, those behaviors are actually the least important thing to focus on. The most important thing to focus on are the skills your child is lacking, which the author calls lagging skills. I've listed some examples of lagging skills here, but there is actually a free PDF form on Dr. Ross Greene's website that I will link in the description of the video, where all lagging skills are listed. When adults understand how lagging skills can set the stage for challenging episodes, they take the behaviors less personally and respond with greater compassion. The second step is understanding when your child is challenging. These are the specific conditions under which those lagging skills are making life difficult, and the author calls these unsolved problems. Those conditions are actually highly predictable. They don't occur out of the blue. And this is good news because it means they can be solved proactively rather than in the heat of the moment. When it comes to reducing challenging episodes, unsolved problems are even more important than lagging skills. Kids are challenging sometimes in the specific situations in which the demands or expectations being placed upon them outstrip the skills they have to respond adaptively. For example, homework, chores, screen time, school. Identifying the unsolved problems associated with each lagging skills tends to be a little harder, and there are a few guidelines. The first guideline is, whenever possible, start each unsolved problems with the word difficulty. The guideline number 2 is make sure the unsolved problems are sufficiently specific and split rather than clumped. The third guideline is to keep your theories about the cause of the unsolved problem out of the unsolved problem. And the fourth guideline is to keep solutions out of the unsolved problems. I've listed a few examples here from the PDF I mentioned earlier. Most behaviorally challenging kids are reliably set off by the same 5 or 6 problems every day or every week. It's highly predictable. It's not just the timing on your problem solving that will probably need some adjustment. It's how you're going about trying to solve the problems in the first place. And this brings us to the next part of the framework. There are 3 options to respond to unsolved problems, and the author calls them Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. Plan A involves solving a problem unilaterally, typically imposing will and often accompanied by adult-imposed consequences. If you throw Plan A at a kid that doesn't have the skills to handle Plan A, you are placing demands on him that outstrips his capacity to respond adaptively. And the paradox is that kids that are least likely to handle Plan A are the ones most likely to get it. And the problem is, solutions arrived through Plan A are not only unilateral, but they are also uninformed. With Plan A, you are not trying to understand why your child is having such difficulty completing his math homework, for example. You're just insisting on having your expectations met and administering adult-imposed consequences. Consequences that often inflame the situation further and make it more difficult for you to gather the information you need to solve the problem. The second option is Plan B, which is where you are solving a problem collaboratively. And I will deep dive into this a bit later by providing you a clear example on how to have this conversation with your child. One thing to understand is that you don't lose any authority by using Plan B. Any unmet expectations that you can respond with Plan A, you can also respond with Plan B. And you are actually setting limits with both Plan A and Plan B, but in very different ways. Plan B shouldn't be used in the midst of dealing with an unsolved problem. The goal is to solve the problem ahead of time, before it comes up again. The third option is Plan C, which is when you are setting aside an unsolved problem, at least for now, because there are just too many of them to solve all at once. And Plan C is not about giving in, it's about prioritizing. You cannot solve all the problems all at once. So if brushing teeth or completing homework is at the bottom of the priority list, you just set it aside for now. You just won't tell your kid to do it. Now, let's take a look at a specific example of a parent-child discussion using Plan B so you can understand how to implement it. Plan B consists of 3 steps. The first step is called the empathy step. It's about gathering information from your child so you can achieve the clearest possible understanding of his concern or perspective on a given unsolved problem. It usually starts with, "I've noticed that," and ends up with, "What's up?" So in this example, "I've noticed that we've been struggling a lot over homework lately. What's up?" So we make no mention of challenging behavior or our theories about the child's concerns, and we don't include any solution. Sticking with the guidelines increases the likelihood of your child participating in the process. The initial response rarely provides a clear understanding of the child's concern or perspective, so you'll need to probe more for more information. This process is called drilling. It's the hardest of all the components of Plan B. The primary goal of drilling is just to clarify. It's not about grilling, which tends to be an act of intimidation. Your goal is to demonstrate to your child that your attempt to understand his concern or perspective isn't fake. You really want to understand. Some drilling strategies are doing some reflective listening, which is the art of simply saying back to the child whatever he just said, asking questions beginning with the words who, what, where, or when, asking about why the unsolved problem occurs under some conditions and not others, asking the child what he's thinking in the midst of an unsolved problem, and breaking the unsolved problem down into its component parts. The great thing about this framework is that there are many skills taught just by doing Plan B. So in the empathy step, kids practice reflecting on their concerns and expressing those concerns with words without getting heated up. Once you have a clear understanding of the unsolved problem, the next step is called the define the problem step. The goal is to enter your concern or perspective into consideration. It usually starts with my concern is or the thing is. So in this example, it takes you so long to write the words and that causes you to forget what you want to say. That's good to know. I'm glad you told me. The thing is, if you stop doing your homework completely, then you won't get any practice at writing and it will always be hard for you. Like I mentioned before, there are many skills being taught doing Plan B. And in this step, kids practice listening to another person's concerns without getting upset. The third step is called the invitation step, which involves brainstorming potential solutions that address the concerns of both parties. Giving your kid the first crack at thinking of a solution is a good strategy because it lets him know you're actually interested in his ideas. Many parents, in the eagerness to solve the problem, forget about this step. Just as they are at the precipice of actually collaborating on a solution, they impose their will. Too often, we assume that the only person capable of coming up with a good solution to a problem is the adult. But kids are very capable of coming up with amazing solutions themselves. And the solution must be realistic and mutually satisfactory. You want your kid to learn that you are as invested in ensuring that his concerns are addressed as you are in making sure that yours are also addressed. Kids whose concerns are being heard, clarified, understood, validated, and addressed, rather than dismissed and ignored, become more interested in hearing your concerns and making sure that they're addressed too. As mentioned before, there are many skills taught just by doing Plan B. And in this final step, kids practice reflecting on multiple thoughts or ideas simultaneously, considering a range of solutions to a problem, considering the likely outcomes or consequences of those solutions, and shifting from an original idea or solution. When you collaboratively and proactively solve the problems that are associated with lagging skills, you are teaching those skills indirectly to your child. We're making progress with a child when he starts applying some of the solutions from his repertoire to a similar problem without being reminded or without assistance. He simply needed a jumpstart to help him with these skills. A jumpstart that Plan A couldn't provide. Like any new skill, Plan B is hard and it takes time to feel comfortable with it. But the more you practice, the easier Plan B becomes. And the beauty of it is that if things don't work out, you can go back to Plan B to understand why and find a better solution. That's it for today. Here is a summary of the book so you can take a screenshot on your phone. And if you have enjoyed this video, please leave me a like and please leave me a comment if you have any questions or comments regarding your child's challenging behavior. Thanks for watching and keep growing!